Hi trainers! How's it going? I hope you're having wonderful games. So I finally made it to Masters in Pokemon Unite. Oh my god! It says Masters! It's Masters! Oh my gosh! In today's video, this will be about how I got to Masters, the Pokemon I use with builds and movesets, strategies and tips, my experience, my struggles, and the current state of rank. I'm Teets, I played MOBAs for over 9 years, and my goal is to help you become the very best like no one ever was. I will be making a new item tier list and a new Pokemon tier list, and if you'd like to be notified of that, feel free to subscribe and click the bell. Big thanks to everyone who asked questions in my last video. I used those questions to help make this master guide. Let's jump into it. First of all, I'm going to be 100% honest in this video about the Masters grind. It wasn't easy. I don't consider myself to be mechanically god at Pokemon Unite, but I do personally feel that I have good game sense. I am from Australia, and we don't have servers in our region for Pokemon Unite at the moment. Because of this, I usually have around 200 ping for most of my games, depending on where it puts me. Usually Asia, but sometimes I was in Europe or NA. Now, as an Australian, I'm pretty used to this. I play high ping on most of my games outside of Pokemon Unite, and because of this, I'm pretty used to predicting where moves would be if there wasn't any ping, and the ping also delays my movement just a little bit. So let's talk about how I did this. This is by memory. From beginner to expert rank, I did this in solo queue. From expert rank to veteran rank, I did solos and duos with my good friend Maxi Q. From vet 1 to vet 3, I did this in trios with Max and my friend Tommy. After the trios, I went back to duos. I D-ranked from vet 3 down to expert 5. Then I had to climb back up with a mixture of solo queue and duo queue. I finally reached Ultra 1. I got up to Ultra 4 in duo queue with Max, but then I ranked down again all the way back to vet 5. So from vet 5, I solo queued through Ultras to Masters for the rest of it. I did play a few games at some point in my grind with a group of 5, but we only won one of those games out of the 4 or 5 we played, so it didn't really make a huge impact on my grind. Let's go through the Pokemon that I used. I will also give you the movesets that I used with them and the builds. Through beginner to vet, I played Absol. This is only because I love Absol. I find Absol super fun and its early game is insanely strong, but it does fall off late game, so I didn't use Absol anymore in later ranks. I did do well score-wise, but team fight-wise, late game, I felt like I wasn't doing much more than that. I used Pursuit and Psycho Cut, and the build I used at the time was Floatstone, Scope Lens, and Muscle Band. I wouldn't use this build anymore. What I recommend at the moment is to use Scope Lens, Muscle Band, and Focus Band if you want to use Absol. Through vet, I used Gardevoir and Ninetales. I find Gardevoir's Unite move to be insanely strong for Zapdos fights and team fights. Unfortunately, I also feel that Gardevoir's early game is just really rough. With Gardevoir, I felt like I had to try harder in my games because Gardevoir's early game is just not great. Ninetales, however, is a fantastic pick because it has damage, it has crowd control, it does a lot for the team fights. For Ninetales, I use mainly Aurora Veil and Dazzling Gleam. My build was Muscle Band, Body Barrier, and Focus Band. Through Ultras, I use Gengar, Lucario, and Ninetales. With Gengar, I actually like its Dream Eater and Shadow Ball combo because it felt much safer. The build was Shell Bell, Wise Glasses, and Focus Band. I could completely take out multiple enemies really quickly. With Lucario for movesets, I use Extreme Speed and Bone Rush. For the build, Score Shield, Body Barrier, and Focus Band. Lucario has so much mobility with this moveset. I was able to dash through enemies and take them out and get out of bad situations really quickly. Lucario deals a lot of damage and can get in, get out. I found it easier to play high damaging Pokemon who could carry a bit better. However, I do suggest to use the Pokemon you feel most comfortable with, but if you do want to look into Pokemon that are more viable and you haven't used them before, practice them in standards first and try new things so you can get a feel for it properly before putting them in your ranked games. If you're playing defender or supporter, you might have a harder time solo queuing in ranked because you will rely on your teammates to secure the kills and deal the damage. Okay, let's go through the tips and strategies. Tip number 1, calling top. Dreadnought is an important objective, and sometimes you get teammates who do not rotate. I try to take top because I know I will rotate to bottom to help secure or contest Dreadnought. A lot of the times in my games I had teammates who did not rotate, so I found this to help a bit. Dreadnought is an important objective, more important than Rotom because it gives the team experience. In turn, the more experience you have, the higher level you are, which means the better stats your Pokemon will have. Tip number 2, stealing farm. Stealing the enemy's farm has been game changing for me. It levels you up and pushes them behind. I do this right from the beginning of the game. Here is the farm I steal on the map. Early level, I try to take these, but for the rest of the games, I try to secure any of these. I will also try to find any opportunity to take their camps as well where possible, but usually I only do this if I know the location of their jungler. Tip number 3, try not to overstay. This situation happens a lot at the second goal. Some players tend to overstay. The issue is that enemies can heal for more at their second goal, and if it's past 5 minutes, they can use their jump pad to quickly get back. They also respawn very quickly if you have taken them out. If your team overstays, they most likely have the same health they had before after the fight ended. So if you overstay, you're basically going for round 2 but with lower health, which gives them the advantage, and they'll also be full health. If you give them the opportunity to take you out, it will give them an advantage because enemies do gain experience points taking you out. This is why it's important to not overstay. If you manage to get experience lead by taking them out, keep the advantage that you have and instead farm their side of the jungle or any wild Pokemon close to their side to maintain that advantage and to keep them behind. Tip number 4, don't surrender. With Zapdos existing, it gives the losing team a huge opportunity to come back. The only time I suggest surrendering is if you're hard losing and they take Zapdos, but anytime before that, keep trying. There are many games I've won where we are losing only to come back because of Zapdos. Tip number 5, do not take Zapdos if you're winning. I've lost many games where we were winning by a lot only for a teammate to try to take Zapdos and have it stolen by the enemy. When you're winning, you do not need to take Zapdos, instead just defend it from the enemies. If you try to take Zapdos when winning, it gives the enemy a huge chance to steal it. However, you can do it if you're winning if they're all down for a long time or you know exactly where they are and they won't have time to take it, but generally just try not to start Zapdos, defend it. You don't want to give the enemy a chance to come back from a steal. Tip number 6, Dreadnought debuff. If you don't know, Dreadnought has a debuff that reduces your damage to Zapdos by 55%. If you have Wigglytuff, apparently you can remove this debuff, but if not, do not take Dreadnought if you're losing and you need to take out Zapdos. If you're winning, you can take Dreadnought for the level advantage, which in turn will help you out, but keep in mind that you will do less damage to Zapdos, so it's even more important that you do not attempt Zapdos as the winning team if you have the Dreadnought buff. Tip number 7, make sure to use your camera. By default, your L button on the Switch is the camera, and you can use the right joystick to move it around. I use this all the time, especially when checking the health of objectives. Checking the health of the Dreadnought and Zapdos objective is extremely important and will help you decide on your next move. If Dreadnought health is going down quickly and you are at base, the best decision at that point would be to jump to Rotom and farm around there as well. You will need to farm as much as you can to catch up to their experience advantage from Dreadnought. Tip number 8, recalling around Zapdos. This is going to ride on the previous tip, but again, you will have to use your camera to check Zapdos' health. Maybe you are low health and you need to return to base to heal. Before you do that though, use the camera to check if the enemies are on Zapdos. What the issue is here is if you recall and they are quickly chipping away at its health, you will not make it back in time to defend or steal Zapdos. This is a pretty specific situation, but it has saved my games plenty of times, and it also has lost my games as well if you backed at the wrong time. I would always check the health of Zapdos before leaving to make sure the enemy isn't doing it, or if they are almost doing it. I will try and steal it despite having low health. This is because at least it gives me the chance to steal it, but if you go back to base at the wrong time, you can completely wipe out your chances of stealing it. Majority of the time, the team who has Zapdos will win the game, and yes, there are rare times where you can win even if they take Zapdos, but it's not often. Tip number 9, save Unite moves for Zapdos. Your Unite moves will help you secure Zapdos, defend Zapdos, or take out the enemy team. Every Pokemon has a different charge rate for the Unite move, but a good rule of thumb to go by is to not use it past the 4-minute mark if you want it guaranteed to be up. However, you can recharge it quickly from scoring or taking out wild Pokemon. Tip number 10, adapt to your team's playstyle. As an Australian who mostly gets put into Asian servers, the meta seems to be different there. I don't know what it is, but when I play on EU or NA, despite having higher ping, I have an easier time because the meta is a bit more consistent there. But due to this, I have to adapt to my team's playstyle. If they're not rotating to Dreadnought and the whole enemy team is there, I accept that loss. Instead, I will use that time to farm, instead of giving them a free takedown on me and getting even more experience. It's rough, but I won a lot of games where the enemy team has secured the enemy Dreadnought every time. There's not much you can do if your team is on different pages, so I try to adapt to their playstyle to make it easier for me. Tip 11, chasing Pokemon. This one will vary from game to game, but chasing a Pokemon because they're low health and you want to take them down around important fights like Zapdos can be costly. I've seen this happen plenty of times and we've lost games because of it. It's pretty much on the same line as baiting. If you chase a low health Pokemon and it brings you out of position from defending or securing Zapdos, it can be costly and does impose a risk. If you chase them to their goal zone or to their base, it will put you heavily out of position and the enemy team can try and steal or take Zapdos without you being there. Instead, I suggest to not chase an enemy you have to try really hard to catch and help your team by zoning or using damage to secure Zapdos. Just say there is a team fight at Zapdos, 5 on your team, 5 on the enemy team. If you manage to get 1 low health but you can't take them out, that will still make it a 5v4. But if you chase them and you have pretty good health and they don't, it will turn the fight at enemy Zapdos into a 4v4. Instead, it would be great to have you there to make it a 5v4 because that enemy who's low health will have to go back to heal up anyway. Tip number 12, defending. Defending is super important and I've lost some games with my teammates to not defend. If you take Zapdos, once you score points and you have 0 on you, just leave and go back to base. Stand on the jump pad to see where they will be trying to score or defend the middle goal zone. If you have all your goal zones up, have your team split up and jump right away, traveling to the first goal zones. If you have enough points in the enemy team and you just spawned with some points to score, don't leave your base. If you're already winning after Zapdos, you do not need to leave because your team has already scored enough. Instead, help your team defend. Tip number 13, controller settings. The settings you have for your controller are super important. That will be another video on its own because it's incredibly long to go through, but I will simplify it and have it ready for you in a few days. If you'd like to be notified, subscribe and click the bell. For now, just make sure you have your settings on advanced and have the lowest HP value chosen to target priority. Tip number 14, take a break. If you're on a losing streak, if you're upset or you're frustrated, take a break, turn off the game or just go into quick and set of matches to refresh. When you're frustrated, it will impact your gameplay even if you don't feel like it is. Every small thing your team does that you do not agree with will anger or frustrate you more. A lot of you mentioned how calm I am in my gameplays, and generally I am a pretty calm person, but I am also human. I can get pretty upset too. The best thing we can do for ourselves is to take a break. Losing streaks happen to all of us, especially if you're in a party of less than 5. Please don't blame yourself or be hard on yourself if you are. That's all the tips I have so far. If I remember any more or have any more to add, I will add it to my pinned comment down below. Next, we're going to talk about scoreboard and MVP. Scoring is important, but defending is also just as important. Don't feel bad for not scoring as high as your teammates if there was a reason you couldn't score. I have had games where I didn't score that much, and that was because I spent more time defending our goal zones to prevent the enemy from scoring, which is just as important. Sometimes it can be hard to score in the enemy goal zone if they're defending it well too. With the lack of communication options currently, it can be difficult to have everyone on the same page. The scoreboard can paint a really misleading picture. There's a lot of things that the scoreboard doesn't tell you and your team. Now for the MVP crown. MVP heavily favors those who score the most points, which I think is pretty unhealthy for the game. Because of this, we sometimes get players who will only score, they will ignore Dreadnought, they will ignore Zapdos because they want the MVP crown from scoring. MVP at the moment is not a good indicator of the player who may have done the most because it is given a majority of the time to the one who scored the most. MVP doesn't show who secured Dreadnought, who defended the goal zone, who zoned enemies away from Zapdos, who healed their team and kept everyone alive, etc. Okay, we're almost done. For the last topic, I want to talk about the current state of ranked. At the moment, I find it to be very difficult to grind due to the lack of matchmaking. It seems that it will match you with anyone just to get the games going quicker. If you're in veteran rank, you literally can be ranked with players from great class all the way to masters class. So you can be ranked with everyone except beginner class, which means you have a huge matchmaking pool of players who may not be at the same skill level yet or ones who currently have a higher skill level. Because of this, matchmaking can sometimes feel like a coin flip since it matches you with anyone in many different ranks. I do feel that the rank system needs to be improved, especially with matchmaking. I also think that you need to have the Pokemon you're using mastered if they add masters into the game. This will prevent players trying to play new Pokemon they haven't touched at all in ranked. A role queue system would also be great too, and there'll be less clashes. That's what I have about ranks so far. I just think matchmaking is probably the biggest issue for me. If you have anything you want to add about the rank system, feel free to comment it down below. In conclusion, the rank grind is not easy. It takes a long time, but implementing these tips should help. I find the most important thing to be is to take a break if you get frustrated and come back to it with a fresh mind. I struggled my way to Masters too. It wasn't smooth at all. I deranked and ranked up again, but I kept pushing through. I made some misplays, I made some mistakes, but I made sure to reflect on each one and try to improve it for the next game. I learned a lot on the way, so I hope this will help your grind to Masters, and if you have any questions, please do ask in the comments down below. With my grind to Masters, I gained a lot of new experiences. I will be making a new item and ranked tier list and have it ready for you trainers this week. Thank you so much for watching, trainers. Subscribe and click the bell for more Pokemon Unite guides, news and gameplays. Like the video if you want to get to Masters. I wish you lots of luck on your grind. Bye!